I got to get my jam in. Well, welcome to BTG, Bridging the Gap, Strategizing for Student Success. I have my host backstage. I'm going to bring him in there in shortly. But this is my favorite time. This is the time we can give back. We can speak to our parents. We can speak to our young people and give them encouragement and talk to them more and more and more about leadership. Self-leadership, you got to start with yourself. And then cultivating a mindset in our young people to lead others. And so taking center stage and owning it with me is the senior contributing writer, Coach Ray. He is in the house with me, Coach Ray, Coach Ray, Coach Ray. And then Dr. P is in the house with us. This is my BTG team. And we love speaking into the life of our young people and encouraging our parents to never give up, to stay the course, to be intentional, and be strategic with your children. And so today we are talking about fatherhood. And we've been talking about fatherhood on the Own It platform all month long, right, guys?
Yes, we have.
And, and so listen, we want to talk about fatherhood. So we're gonna as ladies in the house, we're gonna digress and we're gonna let the gentleman kind of speak first. So what words do you have to fathers out there, Coach Ray, to encourage them, to build them up, or some tips for them? What do you have?
It's an endurance race, not a sprint. It's it takes patience, it takes time. It's going to be frustrating days, but the end result is what you're seeking. The end result is to know that you did what you could for your kids to the level of appreciation, and they're not going to show it every day. I think that's a part where, as parents in general, we look for a level of appreciation that we're not going to physically see or get, especially fathers. Like that doesn't come um, until a little later when they're probably older and they realize that everything that you did was for a reason because it starts to click as they get older. So, like I said again, it takes endurance. It's not a sprint. It's not an overnight fix. You're gonna make some mistakes. You're gonna fail in some areas, but fail forward and work to become better at what you're doing. Because a lot of times there are fathers who get so frustrated and are ready to quit or back away, and you just gotta fail forward. You're human, and your kids are gonna forgive you. You just gotta be willing to fail forward.
Mhm. That's so good. So as you were talking, I like to take my notes and stuff like that. And so we talked about appreciation. Um, we talk about appreciation, right? And men have that need to feel appreciated. I love TD Jakes because he did the whole series called He Motions. Men have emotions too, and I'm hearing that constant thread of men feeling needed, wanted, appreciated. One thing that we did when we first talked at the top of this month, we talked about how the result, men, fathers, influencing, having impact, and getting results and empowering their young. At the top, we talked about how when a father is present, how the children do extremely well academically, athletically. They're high achievers. We see such an impact on that dad and the results he gets with his children when he is there. And so I was taking some notes in regards to physical appreciation, like the hugs. When kids are little, that's what inspired me to write Maintain Your Superhero Status, a Real Parent's Perspective, was because we kids, when they see their parents when they're little, we are superheroes. They jump on us, they leap on us, they're on our backs, they're doing it. And then somewhere along the line, we lose that. We lose children. And so, Dr. P, I'm going to charge you with this. I know that you're not a parent, but you talked about, the discussion with PD Jakes and the panel discussion and the two gentlemen that you shared about in your example. Talk about how those scenarios and how they worked out.
So it's interesting, and some of our viewers may have seen it. It was specifically today the panel
Speak up just a
discussion.
little bit, Dr. P.
Okay. the panel discussion. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the panel discussion basically it was two particular questions that it wasn't even as it continued, didn't even go as far as just the gentleman, because even one of the things he said is that we as adults and parents and adults again can listen and hone in. One person talked about specifically asking the question of how do you be a father and how do you become a strong man if you did not have that as an example, for instance, in your household, and not having the jealousy and all those types of things. But it was very specific that he asked when he asked that question, Jake's actually talked about the fact of you made it, God was your father, and you had that example of knowing that you could still become the man that you needed to become. The other person asked the question of now that even in having the father in the household or having that father where he almost felt like he wasn't liked. But Jake's explained to him that when you're while you're being a father, and Coach Ray, you kind of elaborated on it a little bit because he talked about it's not just even a sprint or a race, but it's a journey and it's like the way life is. And it's very specific that when your children are younger, even for instance, that you have to be your parent. You have to be the disciplinarian. You have to make sure you're working, getting that food on the table, and having a roof over your head. So then, when you get to be at an age, and hopefully that you have these adult children, and you're trying to do the bonding, and now you want to almost be friends. So how do you now, as an adult child, actually interact with your parent when you may have not felt that love and felt those hugs as a child, and now they're trying to do that. So he was even showing them that part of it is as a parent and as an adult that's there for all children, the village, no matter if they're your biological children or even or not, you're able to now forge ahead and be that strength and have that relationship because you don't have to be you don't have this little child anymore. You have a person that you can now see thrive as an adult, and especially as men. It was really specific, and I know, of course, I kind of paraphrase it a little bit, but it was something that was just very profound because we as men and women, adults, and we're talking about children and youth. There's so many things that we think we're not doing right, but again, it's a journey, and you're going to get it right, and hopefully all children, all adults will also learn that there's grace in it, there's forgiveness in it, as well as just we're in this together. We have to give each other that space to grow and and be as best as we can be. So parents and children, as you listen to us and as you think about these things, it's important to know that we're all in this and we're all trying to figure a lot of things out together, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Just that
It,
simple.
yeah, you said something earlier that was important too, was that even though he didn't have his father involved, he was still able to still have a successful life. So the choice ultimately, and this is really a charge to our young people, is that sometimes our parents don't know how to show up. I remember earlier today just having a conversation with God, and just was like, even though my parents were, I love my parents, but they weren't, I could see some flaws, so to speak. They weren't perfect. But there's something in my heart that still loved them like crazy, and really cherished what I could pull out of anything that they did that was great. And I just really, I think, channeled my energy so that I was successful on the positives of what I could take. And that's critical for our young people. And it's also a message, and I like that too, that we can speak to our adults and say, hey, if there's reconciliation that's coming with you and your father, being that we're focusing on fathers, find it in your heart because forgiveness free. Forgiveness could free both parties, but it'll definitely free the person who is offering the forgiveness. But reconciliation, if you can ever, especially if someone's getting ready to pass, reconciliation, if you can allow them to leave in peace, they may not even deserve it. They may not even deserve it. But to be able to offer someone that is priceless. And so I see you, Coach Ray. You
Yeah.
can chime in on that and give your insight on that as well.
So when we're discussing the term of reconciliation or building a relationship as adult kids to the parents, it's possible. However, if the kid has been let down so many times and that parent comes along when they're adults and lets them down again, at what point does it become insanity for the kid to assume that this relationship is going to work? At what point do they actually wake up and realize, like, I'm wasting my time? And unfortunately, there are some times where people have to make that decision.
Yeah.
That's the other side of the coin, because we can present the whole movie theme aspect of it'll work out in the end, and the parents actually get it together and the kid, it works out. But there are some instances where the parent never figures it out, and that kid is consistently left in limbo because they're stuck between moving on with their life and wanting to have a relationship with a parent who's absent minded or absent the thought of their own kid.
Or
So
just keep it real, their parent is selfish.
it's selfish,
Because that's the case. Yeah,
self-indulged. And
that's the case
so
too.
at what point do we go to that young person and say, hey, you've done enough to be successful without them, keep going? Because that's the conversation that has to be had. Because if you don't, then they're going to continuously wonder what could be of something that doesn't exist.
That's another avenue to take as well. The point that I was making was if it's an adult with an
Mhm.
adult parent who's on their deathbed, and it is a point of reconciliation. So that's where that was really focused on. And it's
But
up
do
to you.
they? So okay, so I'm sorry, I'm playing. I'm playing. I'm spinning the other side of the coin. So
Mhm.
this kid has been hurt for years by this parent. Do they owe it to be there for reconciliation?
Oh, absolutely not. Oh,
Right, and so
absolutely
that's
not.
that, and that's what I'm looking at the
Oh,
other side of the
absolutely
coin.
not. That's not a mandate. It's up to you. It
Right.
really is up to you as the individual, and it's also up to you based on your experience with that individual.
Okay.
I really feel like it's that way. But if it's not that detrimental, if it's not that harsh, because sometimes we can be petty, and when we do anything, we have to examine ourselves as well. And so I'm speaking from an extreme where this
Okay.
individual's father is getting ready to pass, and they're elderly. Do you really want to hold them hostage to that, or do you want to say, well, because they can be genuine when you're on your last days? Just think about that. If you just close your mind and get yourself, you get ready to die, and you just never got it right. You never got it right. Even the most selfish people can get to that point where they're like, oh my God, my time is literally up. And because the first thing to do is just to get their house in order, right? The first thing to do is say, oh, I'm sorry. That's what they do with AAA or AA meetings, is go and apologize and get things right. So it's up to you as to whether or not you want to forgive someone or not. That's really up to you. I know for me, forgiveness works huge. Have I been wrong to a my God, oh God? No, no, I've not been wrong to that degree. So I can't speak from that perspective, but I can speak from the perspective of when you free somebody, you let them go and you keep it moving. Forgiving is not always sticking with the person. I don't stick around people who are not going to treat me right, but I can release you so that you are no longer with me. And that's my point. I forgive you. Don't feel like you owe me anything. Please keep it moving. I can do that. Abuse, no, I'm not for abuse. I'm not for any of that. But I do know the power of forgiveness for the forgiver, not the forgivee necessarily, but for the forgiver. I had let so many people go, and I don't have them with me. I don't have to remember what they did wrong to me. I don't have to remember. I just know that you ain't the one, right? And that's it. But fathers and their children, if there's a possibility for reconciliation, I'm all for the reconciliation as much as possible. where it's not going to harm the person who has been wronged anymore, but it is going to help that person who has been wronged to be free to move on and to flourish to that degree. Fathers are very critical. Moms are important, but fathers are super critical. Remember, at the top, I said, when a father is active, when they are involved, and fathers affirm the identity and the strength of that child. Mothers reinforce that through nurturing and affection, but fathers are the pillars. And if a father is not present, that is why the child's knees are wobbling. That's why the child is lost and does not know who they are, because that's what fathers represent. It's a powerful, powerful thing. And unfortunately, we have so many dads, fathers who feel devalued or whatever reason they have not shown up the way that they could as that strong pillar.
No, and that makes sense because it's something that I've thought before. When you talk about parenting, the identity is found through the mom. The value is established from the father.
The identity
Because
is in the dad. That's why the dad's name is
you
there.
know what I'm saying. So I think because no, I say it's from mom because moms can kind of they have that sixth sense to be able to tell you what you're capable of, with love and nurturing. But the father establishes your value. It gives you the strength to say what you will not tolerate and what you will not go through. You tell your daughter, a father tells his daughter that she's beautiful means something different from when her mother tells her that. So you establish value in with the father. And I think a lot of times with young people, um, in the areas of homes where they're lacking fathers, is there's nobody establishing the value of what you are
There's
and
no
who you
strong
are.
traditions. There's no strong traditions. And traditions
Right.
mean holidays. Traditions means this is what the family does, and this is
Hmm.
why we do it. This is what we stand for. These are our core values. These are the boundaries by which we operate. Well, which these are the rules, right? The pillars of the family. These are the rules, and these are the governing ideologies that we have. That's why I say if you call me by my name, it's Marissa Bluedorn. That's my dad. That's my identity. And my dad was who he was to me. All of his characters and all his attributes, the way he handled things, how he showed up. That I align that when you say my name. It's like when you say my name, that that rings strong with me. So that's why I say to you, fathers set that tone and mothers come in and reinforce, because remember God said that the men are the head of the house, and he's going to give him a helpmate, someone who comes and helps and reinforces that. And so when the family is in proper structure and the hierarchy is in order, that's how it flows. And that's why she's the softer one, coming in reinforcing through affection, words of affirmation, affirming, reinforcing, encouraging. That's what the woman does. That's what the mother does. But the men, you guys are our pillars. You are that, that beam, that main beam that keeps the house structured. And women have come up and they've had to fill the void, but that is not where we belong. That's not our framing. Mhm.
I think a lot of cases of fathers being not being present now, and you can see the visibility in the kids more so than ever. Because a lot of kids, in my era of growing up, a lot of kids were resilient. Dad wasn't there, but they were more resilient. They were like, all right, he ain't coming back. Over time, you can see them gradually get stronger because it's funny. Out of my friend group, growing up, I was the only one that's father was in the house. Out of all my friends that I grew up with in middle and high school, I was the only one. So of course, they used to make jokes about it or whatever, joking me about having a two-parent home and stuff like that. But my friends were resilient. They knew their fathers, they just weren't in the house. And I know my friend Stephen, his father passed away when we were in high school. And so, but he was resilient. Whereas now, it's like I don't even know what to call it, because there are a lot of like young men ain't being young men no more. Not even when it was just the mom in the house, young men could be young men because there were men around,
Right.
uncles,
Uncle.
cousins,
Yeah, right.
uncles, cousins, granddad, guys in the neighborhood. They were willing to pick up the mantle. That's such a they're lacking that now because so many people are using them for what they can gain from them, and nobody's presenting the right steps to be a man. Nobody's saying this is how a man should operate. This is how you tie a tie. This is how you get fitted for a suit. Like nobody's doing that. It's it's I'm going to use you for what I need you for, and that's it. So
Wow.
we're losing manpower as the generations come up to a degree because there's men that refuse to be men, and they're not grooming men as they come up.
Yeah, and that would make sense because you hear a lot more. I saw a post the other day, and the guy was like, you get a good guy, and then you cheat on him, and then and that's emotion, right?
Yeah.
That's coming from emotion. I had another person that I had interviewed, and he was talking about how his friend was a great guy, and the woman. I don't know necessarily if she cheated, but she wasn't good to him. Like she wasn't. So you're in an era. We're in an era in which men are feeling very vulnerable. They're not feeling that machoism that they used to feel back in the day, where you just said, where again, here it goes, where you took pride in taking your son to get a custom suit. Or when he had to get a store-bought suit off the shelf, that he knew which one was the best quality to buy. Teaching them how to do a tie, put on a tie, a bow tie or straight tie, just having those quality moments. I grew up, my stepdad, he had all his suits custom made, all his stuff was custom made. He was the slickster. And, I got a chance to see that, see the quality of the material, quality of stitching, and all that stuff. And today you don't see that. The quality is not, men are not wearing the suits. That's not a priority for them to do. So, what would you do with your son? Are you going to take him to a tailor or not take him? If you're not going to a tailor, then you're not going to take your child to the tailor, your son to the tailor. So all of those moments where you could begin to transition and teach a young man how to be a man, some of the priorities and some of the activities that our men are doing are not going in that direction.
Well,
To
it has
teach
to
them.
be it has to be a charge taken. You have to take charge of the moment, and even if the kid doesn't have a father in the house, what's stopping a man in the community from doing it? But these are choices that we're making nowadays to say that ain't my son, so I'm not worried about it. But in actuality, that may want to be real about it. That one young man you pass over could be the young man that winds up possibly shooting your son because he didn't have the right guidance. If we're gonna be real about it,
Yeah. Or
so
ended up being with your
you can't turn a blind eye to it.
or ended up being with your daughter.
Yeah, like what I'm saying. So I think we've been accustomed to turning a blind eye to this stuff because as long as my kids are straight, I'm good. And it's you have to actually be willing to say, nah, this young man actually needs some level of guidance. I remember, well, I remember it was went to Philly. I took some kids to Philly from the football team, and on the way up, all of a sudden it turns into like a relationship conversation. Like, like I'm just driving the car. If you listen to the music, then they just start talking about like relationships and this is how this is going. This one treating his girl like this, and I'm like, hold on. Now if we're
Yeah.
gonna talk, we're gonna talk. So it got to a point where it was like, all right, let me break down how you supposed to be moving.
Right.
And so to them, it's like, oh shoot, I ain't never, this is a different conversation. But I'm like, all right, ain't nobody told y'all. I'm gonna tell you.
Right.
This is how we move. This is how you're supposed to operate. I didn't always get it right, but at the end of the day, as a man, this is how you're supposed to be moving.
Right.
So if you're trying to date a young lady, this is what I expect as your coach, your mentor, your father, what have you. I expect you to move this way.
Right.
So you have to be willing to take that stand in the gap and stand in the gap for these young men and say, you're not being taught. Cool, I got it.
Right.
Because a 2-minute conversation can be a 20-year life change.
Yep, you got that. You You have that so right. And we always talk about how it takes a village. It takes a village. I can remember as a little girl, if I did something on the block, there were other adults there to tell me, whether it was moms or dads. Somebody was correcting me if I did something wrong. And so we didn't run around amok just doing whatever we wanted to do. We knew if so and so caught you, that was it. And your mom, not only were they going to discipline you, but they were going to tell your mom. And if it wasn't your mom, because I had friends or had people in my community that they were foster kids or whatever, it still worked the same way. They're telling your foster parent, they're going and telling. And you're going to get told on and you're going to be dealt with twice. You're going to be dealt with them and you're going to be dealt with. And they didn't have a problem chastising you in front of everybody. It wasn't a
Listen,
wait, pull you over to the corner. They didn't have to worry about anything like that. And I think that we need to take that back. And I know that we have rules and the kids can call 911 and all this other stuff, but we have to take the responsibility of our children back, because if we don't, that's we are where we are because we've hidden under we can't touch him or we can't. And you can discipline if you start early enough. You can look at your kids. I only my oldest one I had to tear her butt up. My youngest one, man, if I looked at her, that was punishment enough. I ain't never have to worry about her doing something like that again. But you have to start that very early in development. You can't wait, let them do whatever they feel like doing, and then now you wanna. No, you don't have to touch. If you do it right, I'ma
listen.
tell you. I
Wait till
ain't
your dad get home. Still
doing.
with. Wait till your dad get home. Sent chills down my spine.
Mm-mm,
That
mm-mm.
that that was a different vibe when you heard "Wait till your dad get home."
Yeah.
So,
So if I could say this to parents who are very early in the raising of your children, you are their superhero. You are their everything. In their eyes, you can do no wrong yet. Maintain that as long as you can. We know that we're not going to be perfect, but maintain that connectivity with your children as much. And fathers, as I shared earlier, your kids need you, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they need you in the exact house with them. If that is possible, I say strive to make peace and work together as parents, because a home that's together, and prays together, stays together. Because this is your lineage. We're fathers, we're talking about how the world is going to know you for the rest of. My dad's picture is right here when you walk in the door of my home. Because I have the respect for him, I have the honor for him. If you want your children to honor you, you got to show up. And you got to explain. If you're out there and you're hustling and you're trying to make it work, that's all good. Your kids will love you, they'll get that. But you got to communicate that with your kids so that they do get it, they do understand it. And then you do have to spend time with them. So you can't always be hustling and not give them even just a sliver of your time. And you got to explain why the struggle is the struggle so that they
mhm.
understand why the struggle is the struggle. Your kids love you. It's not that they need to have all of your time all of the time, but they do need to know that they have you, and they will feel more connected with you when you open up your mouth and you just tell them the truth. You tell them the truth, and they'll get it, and they'll understand it. And then you also tell them about how you do whatever it is that you know to do well. Share it with your kids. Share that with your kids so that they know what to do well. They'll appreciate that. Kids will appreciate the littlest things. They'll appreciate the littlest things when you start off or you get it right with your children. And so, Dr. P, you've been quiet, so I'm gonna let you say your closing thoughts, and then and Coach Ray, you close us out.
I'm not sure actually if you all heard me. That's why I stayed quiet as well. I was having a little buffer in action, but that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation because I was thinking about the fact that Coach Ray, you said something when you were talking about the trip to Philadelphia. And that was so poignant when I thought about the fact that I remember very specifically in Upward Bound, we went to Canada. And that is how the conversation went. We went from the teenagers, the counselors, to the teachers, having these really deep discussions. And that was one of the most life changing things for even some of the guys to this day that we still talk to each other, because one was making a decision and going on a path that it wasn't going anywhere. And actually, he's passed away since then because he made some of the wrong choices and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Versus the other guy is actually a CEO of a company, but they can still go back to those conversations. But it was, if you're talking about from Philadelphia all the way to Canada, you can imagine how long that conversation was. And tears and just real talk. And it went from personal to, again, that's what that village is for. Marissa, you talked about the people in the neighborhood. Well, we already know it, it definitely takes more than a lot of times what's going on in your household to make strong communities. We know that because parents can't be there 24 hours a day. They do have to go to work. Kids do have to go to school. But it's all those people that are influencing around you. And now, 20, 30, 40 years later, you're remembering. And that's what you're trying to
Mhm.
feed into your kids as well as the young adults that are around you. So that's, a lot of what we're talking about. We're talking about that strength of a father, the strength of a mother. And I'm thinking about the fact of, as you were talking, I'm thinking the word God says, honor father and mother, for that is where long life comes from. So
It
I
well,
wanted
well
to
it
say,
says
but here we
it's the
are.
first. It's the first
That's the first.
command with promise.
That's right. First one.
That's it.
Exactly.
So it's
So enough said when he says that, right?
mhm.
When people always say period, period.
Yeah.
That's
Period.
it. Yeah.
Coach Ray.
Promise.
I'll close with this. Your legacy is attached to the children that you have and
Mhm.
that you impact. So you said something earlier about people in the hustle, like hustling, trying to make it. I get it, but sometimes you got to sacrifice that moment, just a moment, a few moments of hustling to be in your kids' moment.
Mm.
When I show up to my kids' school, my daughter's school, just for something, and just to see her face when I walk in means a lot more than a lot of other things that financial, what have you, because her happiness, my kids' happiness, will always trump the hustle.
That's
I'm
right.
hustling for them, but I need to see them smile so I can keep believing I need to hustle.
Yes.
That's it.
So that's just it. It's like I said earlier, it's an endurance race. It's not a sprint. And if
Yeah.
you believe it's a sprint, you're gonna fall short because you're gonna tap out early. So just take it day by day, one day at a time. Do what you're supposed to do, and be good.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I kept hearing today, David encouraged himself. David encouraged himself. And so, fathers, I want you to encourage yourself. I want you to begin to, I'm going to charge you with this. I want you to begin to do the self talk you need to say that you're needed, to know that you're needed. If no one else ever tells you that, the statistics say when you are present in your child's life, your child thrives. When you're not the child, there's a part of the child that dies. You want
Mm.
your child to thrive, you want them to flourish. Your presence helps them to focus on the needful thing for them and their academics, their in their physical athletics, if they're athletic, if they're in the sciences, knowing that you have their back, knowing that you are protecting them, keeping them secure, and they can rest. And now they can focus on developing themselves so that they can do right by your name. And so I just charge you to, if you have someone that's complicated, a mom that's complicated, and there's ways, I always say, pray. Pray that God touches their heart and gives you favor with them, and makes a way out of no way. Let God put his super on your natural and change your situation. But I just say, whatever you can do to make sure that you don't abandon your children, because it's only for a season. Like, your kids, before you know it, they're grown. It's like, what happened? I remember one day sitting at my desk at work, and I looked up and I said, wait a minute, how old is my how it was her birthday was coming up, and my daughter was 26 years old. Well, anyway, they're 35 and 30, and they're getting ready to be 36 and 31. Um, it goes by fast, and that's why I can speak from where I'm at. Is because my kids are adults. And it goes by fast. In the moment, we feel like it's an eternity, that it's never going to end. They're always going to need something. You're never going to have any money, because your money's always going out to the kids. But trust me, this goes by really, really fast. When you're on the other side of it, you say, whoa, that went by fast. Encourage yourself. Tell yourself that you're great, and then show up great. If someone doesn't hug yourself, or find a community or people that speak your language, or speak to what you really want to say, but you're not around people that you can say it with. Get with the people that are the men who are speaking the way you really feel, so that now you can have that reinforcement that is required in order for you to show up for your family and for your children specifically. This has been another episode. We got one more left. And so I'm looking forward to going in. Your children thrive when you're involved. God bless you guys. We're out. Till next week. Thank you guys.